Diamond sets their sights to the skies. Here's your look at the Diamond Select. This is the Rocketeer Premier Collection Resin Statue. The discovery of a top-secret jetpack hurls test pilot Cliff Secord into a daring adventure of mystery, suspense, and intrigue. Cliff encounters an assortment of ruthless villains led by a Hollywood screen star who's a secret spy. With the help of his actor's girlfriend, the young pilot battles enormous odds to defeat his foes, who are anxious to use the device in an evil plan to rule the world. This approximately 10-inch tall resin statue of the Rocketeer is based on his film appearance and is limited to only 3,000 pieces. It includes a certificate of authenticity. Before we take to the skies and get a closer look at the Premier Collection Rocketeer, the first thing we're going to do is figure out how tall the statue stands. And for that, I'm going to use the Ultra Measure 5000, put that to the very top of his helmet, and we're going to stop the measurement right there. Reading this off, regurgitating it to you, the members of the mob, you're looking at the statue of the Rocketeer standing 10.6 inches in height. And that in centimeters works out to be 27.1 centimeters tall. As touted on the back of the packaging, yes, you do get yourself a certificate of authenticity on the inside just before you take out the foam tray, which of course will contain the Rocketeer inside. The certificate tells you that, yes, in fact, this is an authentic Diamond Select Toy Premier Collection of the Rocketeer resin statue, designed by Cesar and sculpted by Rocco Tartamello. This one also is 546 at the limited run of 3,000 copies. This one was also provided by the folks over at Diamond Select. And if, again, you guys are interested and in the market of picking this one up for yourself, you should be able to find the Rocketeer resin statue right now through various online stores. Of course, I continue to say online stores because right now a lot of comic book stores are closed. This won't mean, of course, anything when you see this video years down the road from now. But right now, certainly a lot of things being closed as they are. Things like picking up pieces like this exquisite Rocketeer, for example, can be a little bit more difficult to come by. So as I would say, is check out your local various, I don't want to say local, but check your various online sites, ones that you regularly go to. And again, if you are looking to pick up this one for yourself, you probably should be able to find it now through, as I said, various websites. Very carefully, this is a statue, being that it's comprised of resin, is heavy and certainly has things about it that could potentially break if you're not careful. Tipping the statue upside down, yes, you are still treated to that same number I showed you on the certificate of authenticity, 546 out of that run of 3,000 copies. Also on the underside of the display base, being especially that this is resin, Diamond Select have also put some additional felt feet. There's one there, there's one there, and then of course one there, just to prevent any scratching if you put this on any surface like a tabletop. First thing we'll have a look at is the display stand that the Rocketeer is perched on top of. Just before he's about to take flight, as you can see, the rocket is already ready to go. We want to, of course, spend some necessary time discussing the craftsmanship that the Diamond Select team continues to put into their pieces. Whether you choose to go the route of gallery statues, which of course would be comprised of PVC plastic, or pieces like this, for example, these are produced using resin. So they're going to be a little bit heavier than the gallery statue I mentioned before. But still, whatever choice you choose, you can really, again, admire the amount of work that they put into these pieces. I mean, even just like if you look at the top, this would be, I guess, at the top of the building here. And this is, of course, serving as the platform from which the Rocketeer is going to fly off of. But they have spent just as much time crafting this as they've crafted the Rocketeer himself. All these imperfections to the side of the building face, as well as the front of the building, which has this additional scroll work on either side. That similar artwork is also scribed on either side as well. The paint I could probably describe best as saying it's a brownish copper color, and it makes its appearance basically from one end of the building top to the other side. Now they have brushed over top of likely a darker resin, which is likely probably the same coloring as the underside of the base. The base is usually the indicator here as to what coloring that they went with for the resin. And then again, they've just simply brushed over top of it that copper brown that we had discussed before. It is really a good, effective way of giving you a two-tone effect with really only just brushing one color of paint. Somebody actually isn't in there putting those little pock marks, coloring those in black, when instead all they've really just done is dry brushed over top of it. So the highest surface of the sculpt continues to remain being that copper color. The recessed sections still remain to be that darker black. Very effective, very simple to produce, and it does translate to a really neat looking display base that the Rocketeer is on top of. Now, I was really excited to get the Rocketeer statue here in hand. Of the very long wish list of things coming out from Diamond, both the Rocketeer figure, which we just recently had a look at, and now the Rocketeer resin premiere statue, which we're looking at right now, were the two that I think were at the top of the list for me. Rocketeer, as I'm sure I probably sound like a broken record already by saying this, was one of my all-time favorite films growing up as a kid, and still now enjoy watching it. It's great to see companies like Diamond are producing collectibles for, really, you think about it, a movie that has never gotten a sequel since its 90s release. So what we get here with the Rocketeer premiere statue? Well, obviously by comparison to, say, the figure, you're getting a staction rendition of Rocketeer. Obviously it's not going to be able to move, it doesn't have moving components to it, but it has a whole lot of details, and we're going to have a look at those right now. I would feel so missed if I didn't have a look at the helmet first and foremost. Obviously, that is the calling card for the Rocketeer, and I think the helmet really turned out rather nicely. Obviously, underneath all of this would still be that same black resin that would be the starting base color, and then everything on top of that would simply just be the paint over top. And in case here of the gold, the metallic gold has been just painted over top, brushed over top of that black resin. And what that has translated to is there are a few little areas here where the black from the undersurface of the resin sort of still peek their way through. This is actually, I think, in a good way, because it does give it a bit of age to it. There's a weathering that happens in this helmet that if it was completely painted solid gold, I think you would really lose some of the elements, that real rustic look that the helmet appears like in the film. Now, with the suit itself, for example, he does have his aviator's jacket on. This is one talking point I did want to mention on this particular resin statue. It may not be on everybody's, for example, but if we look at the back jetpack, of course, which is fully lit, we want to make sure we don't touch near that. This is obviously strapped. It's strapped along the back section here, and it runs through the top flaps of his jacket and running down the front here. Now these should technically be brown, and they are, but it does look like that continuation of that caramel brown from his aviator's jacket has been brushed across that surface. I think if anything, I might probably just take a little bit of brown paint, go in and touch that up. It's the one element of this statue, unfortunately, for a paint level, does lack a little bit, because again, it just looks like they've brushed right across it. Underneath it probably was the starting of that dark chestnut brown, and yet for one reasoning or another, this lighter caramel color ended up, like I said, inadvertently brushing across it. So a lot of that brown unfortunately just got lost in the mix. As I said, I'll probably just take a paintbrush and go in there and just finish those up so that the straps of the jetpack actually stand out against the backdrop of the aviator jacket here. The jacket is nicely sculpted with, as you can see, all those individual snap buttons running around the parameter of the flap. Of course, this is the part that's going to be folded over to the front because he has the straps of the jetpack underneath this. This will just fold over top of it. The gold has been added to each one of the individual buttons, the individual snaps here. And as you can see, that caramel color, we're going to just call it caramel color. It'd probably be a little bit closer to a milk chocolate brown. As you can see, there are a few little areas here on the front. Probably could have, again, been painted just a little bit, but maybe a second coat. We'll say a second coat of that color probably could have been afforded here on the flap, because again, you have a few little areas On the helmet, it wasn't so much an issue, but I feel on the front, if they had just kind of finished this up a little bit with a second coat, as there are a few little areas here and there that stand out. You can see the dark coloring of the resin starting to peek and bleed its way through. Even though there's elements to the aviator jacket that I feel slightly are unfinished, again, the front flap probably could have used a secondary coat of paint, and those brown straps from the jetpack could have gone back, and maybe somebody could have just painted those back in the chestnut brown. The rest of the statue, I have no issues whatsoever when it comes to the paint. In fact, some of the best paint, if we just spin this around carefully, we look at the back jetpack that's housed on his back, and that's been not only sculpted nicely, but painted exquisitely in this metallic silver paint. Even right down to the fact that they've got the little wad of chewing gum. I would feel so upset if that was left off, but luckily, like in the figure, the premiere version of the Rocketeer also has that little wad of chewing gum. It looks like they've actually just taken a brush and stroked it down, giving you almost these little lines of silver. I think it works well. Again, you've got a little bit of that black peeking through, and it looks like they've also added some additional dry brushing of black also, so that the things like the vents, for example, the fan, all stand out. The thrusters down below are painted in a different color, and they've even actually gone in there and painted little tips to the wires, and then they've done those in gold. Of course, there's also the topic of looking at the flames, which initially I thought, do they need to put flames on the premier statue of Rocketeer? But then I thought it would feel absent if they left it off completely. Also, when you look at the statue too, the way that the Rocketeer is posed on top of the building, it looks like he's just landed, possibly ready to take off yet again. I think flames are best way to go with this release of the Rocketeer. And you can see on the back, they've done it in a translucent color scheme, going lighter on yellow and then getting progressively warmer on orange as we get to the very ends of the flames. The neat thing about it, though, is that the flames are kind of blowing off to this side. Again, so it kind of looks like he's landed as opposed to having the flames coming straight down. It's a small touch like that I really think Diamond Select nailed a perfect rendition of Rocketeer here. Obviously, the Rocketeer wouldn't be going anywhere if he didn't have the activation buttons on the sides, the insides of his aviator gloves. You can see not only have they sculpted that, but they've also allowed them to stand out by painting them silver against the backdrop of the black fingers. That is actually the case on both sides, so let me just show you what's going on here. There's the secondary button there on the top. The gloves themselves are also a lighter color on the top section of the glove, where again the fingers are more of a jet black. These here are more of a lighter color. Again, I feel like maybe a second coat of paint probably could have been afforded to the top section right there. I don't feel as that it stands out as much the sore thumb, no pun intended, as maybe the front of the jacket, which I feel like probably could have used the most amount of paint as a second coat applied. A lot of cool stuff came together here for the release of the Rocketeer Premier Collection resin statue. I like the pose of the character, standing on top of the building face, either looking as if he's just landed, or based on the way he's posed, it looks like he's about to take off yet again. The inclusion, of course, of the translucent flames in the yellow and then transitioning to the orange is a nice touch, and overall, the paint on this guy is pretty good. Things, of course, I could narrow in on, or is probably maybe the additional paint that probably could have been afforded to the front flap of his aviator jacket. It feels slightly unfinished. Maybe a second coat could have finished that off. And of course, there is the straps that come out from his jetpack that is underneath, of course, the flap. I feel like I want to go back there with a little bit of brown paint and just touch it up a little bit. But those are all cosmetic issues. Something, again, with a little bit of paint, a little bit of time, and a little bit of pizzazz on my part, I could probably just go in there and finish up all the things that I feel lacked a bit on this figure. Again, it's not so much the sculpt, and I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Again, it's just more little cosmetic touch-ups that I know in my limited skill set, I could go in there and most easily finish up the straps, color those in the more chestnut brown, and I've got myself a nice finished looking Rocketeer that I'm happy to put on display. Rocketeer, again, I sound like a broken record, I'm sure, when we looked at the Rocketeer figure, but is one of my all-time favorite movies. It was certainly one of my all-time favorite early 90s films when the film first came out. And I've watched the film frequently since, ever since the time it first came to theaters. I've grown up a lot more since then, and though I do feel the special effects in the movie maybe date the film slightly, it's interesting to see that companies like Diamond Select are still churning out collectibles, figures, and memorabilia based on the Rocketeer. It certainly says something for the longevity of this film. I would love to see a 1-to-1 scale of the Rocketeer helmet. I don't know if that's at Diamond's disposal, but if Diamond Select could produce a 1-to-1 scale replica of the Rocketeer helmet, count me in. I'll be handing over my money immediately. Did you guys manage to pick up this one for yourself? Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the Rocketeer Premier Collection resin statue. I'd also like to send out a big thank you to the folks over at Diamond Select, of course, who were nice enough to send a sample and made this review possible. If you guys also want to check out some early sneak peeks at some of the stuff that Diamond is putting out, might I recommend that you guys check out their YouTube channel. Yeah, Diamond Select has a YouTube channel. It's the best place, again, to get early sneak peeks at some of the stuff that will be hitting stores, or obviously in the case right now, hitting online stores. And again, if you guys want to check out their YouTube channel, I'll provide the link down below. Speaking of YouTube channels, make sure you hit that subscribe button to this channel. Make sure you hit the bell notification and keep your peepers peeled, because we're going to have a look at a whole bunch of cool statues lined up in the coming videos. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.